we, each school, each PTA school and student council or student group can get together and do either an outside graduation or something else to celebrate each and every one of our high school kids. We know that you guys went to school for 12 years or 13 years in Irvine schools, and it's so important that you do this with your friends more now than ever. But we just can't do it now, but we want you to be able to do it later. So there's no stopping it from doing it later, and each individual school can have that opportunity. Paul, do you would like to add?
I think the only thing I would add that in addition to that there are schools at the elementary, middle, and high school who are also doing some of their own, not so much celebrations in terms of an activity, but for instance, passing out yard signs for seniors or students in 8th grade to recognize those students that way as well. Some places are having kids submit pictures and other things to make it more personal. And the virtual ceremonies that are planned are meant to be as personal as possible, or personalized rather. They're not in person, obviously, but they're meant to be personalized so that there'll be pictures of kids and there may be stories about them or things about their background. So every attempt is being made to customize and personalize it as much as possible, even though, as Lauren said, at this point, it's not deemed safe or appropriate to have the graduations in person. But we would very strongly look at, realistically, probably a July timeframe to have something live if circumstances change and make that safe. And remember, they have to be safe for students, for families, for teachers, and even if we don't have families attend a live, we've seen people ask, well, just have the students attend, but we have teachers there as well, and teachers of different ages, different medical conditions. So it is nowhere near as simple as people seem to think. And so we're doing everything we can to balance honoring the students at the 6th grade, the 8th grade, and the 12th grade level, and balancing that need and the fact that they deserve that recognition and celebration with the obvious safety concerns we have for teachers, students, staff, parents.
Right. I'd like to add one thing also, that each school is customizing their virtual 6th grade promotion, 8th grade promotion, high school graduation. So the customization is really a balance between, it's a collaboration between parents, students, and the administration and teachers. So to come out with something as personal as they can for each individual school is what everybody's striving for. But as I said before, it doesn't mean that something can't happen in July or August or into the fall as we get clearance to be able to do things in a very safe way.
Thank you so much. And now we have another question. It says, what are your thoughts about opening school earlier in July as opposed to late August? We're expecting a large peak of COVID in the fall, and opening earlier may give schools a head start as well as, oh, I just lost my comment. As well as provide students face-to-face time with their new teachers and establish a rapport.
So maybe I'll answer that question and just broaden it a little bit to address some of the concerns I think people have. So the likelihood that school will open earlier than expected is almost zero. There's not clearance or guidance from federal, state, or county health organizations about what that would look like. The logistics of opening schools for 38,000, 37,000 kids early, coming off of, effectively 1 month or 5 weeks after a very unusual school year ended, is just not practical, to be honest. As of now, the school year is expected to start for year-round schools and for traditional schools at the same time that they were always planned. So middle of July, I think it's the 15th, but I may be off. Middle of July for year-round, and then 3rd week in August for traditional schools. What that looks like is yet to be determined. So when I say that school will start, that doesn't mean there's been a determination as to what that will be. In person, emergency distance learning, hybrid. If a hybrid, what does a hybrid look like? So the dates right now are what they've always been for year-round and traditional schools. How that looks is yet to be determined. Realistically, that determination will probably not be made until the beginning of July. And I understand for parents, some of that uncertainty is difficult, but part of this is that we are looking for guidance from health agencies at the various levels. And this is obviously an incredibly complicated situation to balance in terms of we want kids back at school, but there are obviously safety and health concerns that we need to balance. So I think realistically, just to set parents' expectations, there will not be a determination throughout the state as to what school looks like when it does open until probably the beginning of July. So,
and you will, oh, I'm sorry,
No,
Paul.
you go on, I'm sorry.
But, and you will get clear communication from us on a regular basis on what's happening. Everything is so fluid right now, and everything changes within days. Something can set us back, push us forward. Those things we have to take in consideration. And as Paul eloquently said, there are so many tentacles to how to open the school. A kindergartner coming into kindergarten versus a 12th grader is a whole different thing. You know, what you have to do for parameters. So those have to be worked through, whether we're doing distance learning or blended learning or a hybrid, as Paul said, or staggered schedule. That has to be worked through this summer to make sure that our, if we are going distance learning, it's not emergency distance learning anymore. It will be distance learning where it will be a different outlook. So the fluidity of the situation, what we can say is communication, communication, communication. We will keep everybody abreast of how it's moving forward.
Perfect. And then we have a comment from Kate who says, please don't rush with opening schools and consider what might happen. So thank you, Kate, for chiming in here.
And Kate, that's one of the things where we're going to make it right. We're going to make it right to the best of our abilities with the guidance we have.
Right. And then next we have a question from Nitu. What are your thoughts on drive-by graduation ceremonies? Kids need closure, especially during this uncertain time. They need to experience some happiness.
Well, I'll take that to start, and I know you'll have things to add, Paul. I agree wholeheartedly. Everybody needs some happiness. Well, happiness, or they need some connectivity, and connectivity really keeps us all together. And closure of a school of a high school year, an 8th grade year, a 6th grade year is also important. But as I said before, right now, we can't do anything to jeopardize our students first and foremost, their families, our staff. We have to make sure it is right for the moment. And that's why we are encouraging each individual school, when the time is right, to open that up to that closure moment, whatever that closure moment may be. It may be a formal graduation. It may be a huge picnic with everybody together enjoying each other's company. But whatever that is for that community of school, that school community, it will bring closure, and it will give them the sense of connectivity that they need. Paul, do you need to?
No, just briefly, look, we recognize that option is one that people talk about. People may have seen it in some school districts. It is still pretty rare to see that, but we all hear of school districts that do that. But if you step back, and I absolutely understand, as Lauren said, I understand the need for closure, the desire to have something like that more in a more tangible way honors kids and lets them be together even if they're in cars. So I absolutely accept why that is appealing. What is difficult in the current state and with the governor's current order to say that we as a government entity are going to encourage a gathering of 600 cars, which means anywhere from 600 to 2,400 people, depending how many people in the car, in a relatively small space. And even if you stagger it, so take the average high school graduating class in Irvine is about 600 kids, roughly. So even if you put that in two, so you've got 300, so you've got anywhere from 300 to 1,200 people whom you are encouraging to come together. Will they stay in their cars? Not sure. Also, for it to be meaningful, they will want there to be some interaction with teachers. Even if you do it on an average TA or homeroom, that average TA in Irvine is, say, assume 35 to 40 kids. So do we want a teacher interacting with 35 kids? Is that fair to the teacher, even if they only do their own TA? So I absolutely, again, accept and understand the desire. I understand the appeal. I understand why people say everyone's in their car, what's the harm? But there is potential harm. And again, encouraging anywhere from 1,200 to 2,400 people to come together on, and we are a government entity so we have still, orders and guidance from the government. So that is difficult for us to do. And I absolutely accept that that is not a great answer for people. And I accept that people have a different view. If you consider those factors and say that out loud, that we may encourage 2,400 people to get together in a relatively small space, that doesn't sound good given the current state. As Lauren said, if that changes, which it's very likely to change, or hopefully it will change in the next 2.5 months, 3 months, we would change as well.
Perfect, thank you. And just so you guys know, we have about 80 viewers right now that are watching and have joined us. So thank you everyone for joining in. Let's see, Sandy has a question. If it's in-person instruction due to underlying health issues, do we have the option to continue online and stay safe at home?
There are many options. You know what, I'm going to throw something out right now. In fact, I have it sitting in front of me. There are so many options that we will have coming. We do take everything in consideration. So yes, if there's underlying circumstance in a child or a student, if there's underlying circumstances at home, and if you send your child to school that would jeopardize the home, all those things will be addressed individually. As Paul said, we're a government entity and we're here for everyone, so we will address all those needs. And I just wanted to throw a couple things out just as it goes with what we've been talking about. So Irvine has been working on a blended learning program for K-6 for the last year. And there is already a home, we call it more of a blended learning, but it's homeschooling, you going to class 1 day a week for our K-6 kids. And these are opportunities that could also be offered in circumstances of if someone's worried about a compromised situation. So yes, we do differentiate for every child because everybody is different. And yes, we are 36,000 people, but our job is to make sure that we can accommodate what needs to be on the health and safety of each of these children or students. And
no, absolutely true. The only small thing, just to make sure, I want to make sure if I understood the question directly. If we were to go back to school with any type of in-person model, either actually all in-person or some hybrid model, I would expect, and Lauren, chime in if you feel differently, I would very much expect that there would be still an online or distance learning option for kids. So if, say, 80% of the kids happen to be in school, but 20% still felt uncomfortable or there were health reasons, those students could still participate via distance learning. So we would not make it all or nothing and would be cognizant of the fact that any type of in-person instruction, hybrid or full in-person, might make some people feel uncomfortable, and we would provide for that discomfort by having an online option.
So I need to apologize right now because my dog is mad because I'm not petting her, and that's why she's barking. And I'm very sorry.
All right. All right, so Shannon has a question. I think this is similar. Shannon and Sandy have similar questions, but again, what are the protocols that IUSD is planning on having in place when schools do reopen? Will there be a chance for the district to offer families the choice of in-person or continuing distance learning? I think we kind of covered that question just now. Portola High has a much smaller graduating class. I don't know if you guys have any numbers on Portola High School.
Well, Actually, I was at Portola High School's virtual graduation setup today, and their graduating class is not much. I don't think it's smaller. I think it may be as similar.
It was Irvine.
454 students are in their graduating class, and so we have,
That's about what Irvine is as well. In the
Yeah.
420, 430.
yeah, it's about the same.
Okay.
But if the question, I mean, I'm assuming the extension of that statement, which again, I understand why people ask that, is that, hey, if it's a smaller number, then why can't we do more? And the short answer is simply that it's just not small enough. You're still talking 430 kids, roughly 420 kids, that you could not bring 400 kids together, let alone families. So although the average I mentioned is about 600, the fact that Portola is in the low 400s or mid 400s would not change that calculation. At least again, at this time, that may very well change in July.
I want to say though, we've had fabulous parent community out there giving us great suggestions, very detailed suggestions on what can be accomplished. And those things definitely can be accomplished a little bit later on. And as Paul said, the numbers, the variations don't really, it's still, we're putting kids maybe at risk, parents maybe at risk, and teachers at risk, no matter what the numbers are, whether it's 400 to 500, it doesn't really change.
And the final, sorry, and I know we always say it's the final point and then there's 6 more points, but one thing also, that even if we were to hear something or think of something, or someone brought something to us now that we hadn't seen before, and we've obviously seen a lot, but I absolutely accept that someone may have a different idea, we would consider that now. So the July, when we talk about July or early August, that's assuming a more, not a traditional graduation, but definitely a more in-person-ish graduation. But if there was some way to do a other hybrid version that was a little bit more in person now, that someone brought to us, we would absolutely consider that now. The drive-through type of thing is what we hear the most. People being in Irvine Stadium or the Great Park, but 6 feet apart is what we hear. But we just could not have 300, 400, 600 students standing 6 feet apart and assume that 6 feet is going to hold. I mean, that we just can't do. But I just want people to know, if there are, this isn't that we're slamming the door now, don't talk to us until July. It's absolutely not that. If something creative were to come up that we think of or a parent comes up with, we would absolutely consider that. And if it's something that could work and we could pivot quickly within a week or two to do it, we'd be happy to do it. We want to celebrate these students. This is not meant to be intransigent. This is not meant to be obstructionist. This is meant to be, how do we keep people's students and staff safe, and while also doing whatever we can to honor and celebrate. So we'd be open to new ideas. If someone has anything, we will absolutely listen to that.
That's why I brought up that we've had some fabulous ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our ceremonies right now are a little bit built off of what people have submitted, but we have read everything people have submitted. I know myself and Paul have talked to many people on the phone to discuss the whole embrace of this. And yeah, anything, we're not cutting off any kind of suggestions at all.
Thank you. That's really great. Alejandra has a question. If schools are going full online, hybrid, etc. next year, would there be more hands-on teaching? My kids, TK and first grade, are not learning as effectively as they were when they were attending school.
So when I started saying we go from emergency distance learning, we just came from, I think it was March 16th, we were told we have to do distance learning by March 19th, and I may have those dates wrong. So we had to turn on a dime to create something to make sure our kids didn't have loss of learning, that we made sure learning kept happening. And that was a different for each grade level. It was different for each teacher. It was different for each student at home. What we have now is the summer. And if we put things together and move forward, and as I explained before, we have, for the last year, we were working with these blended learning models and putting that together and moving forward with that, we will have a different method of distance learning versus emergency distance learning. But I'm not saying we're going into distance learning, because it all is about the fluidity of what happens and what we're able to accomplish within schools, outside of schools, in a hybrid model that Paul explained. So there are different ways it's going to be happening. And yes, it will be different than we just experienced. The emergency will be different than the distance learning.
Great, thank you. And then I know we had a question from a parent who was asking information about year-round schools that are about to start. What can they expect for those schools as we're getting closer to their opening?
So the only thing we can tell them now, and I don't know more. It's not that I'm hiding. We just don't know. Is that the date of when school starts will be the same. And I have in my mind it's July 15th. I could be off, but it's the date that was set last year. So that date for year-round schools is not changing. What that looks like, though, we don't know. And again, realistically, we won't know until probably the beginning of July, maybe end of June, what that looks like. And absolutely accept that that is difficult for parents to hear, and it should be. I absolutely get that. And I'm sorry, we just do not have the information right now to know what school will look like, whether it's year-round schools starting in July or traditional schools starting in August.
Okay. Thank you. And then Lisa has a question. Is there a reason the public was not allowed to give input before the credit, no credit was put into effect? It will impact student scholarship funds up to $32,000 for my kid. Why weren't kids given a choice? I don't know. I believe there was public comment available at that time. I remember following this item.
Yeah, so we, thank you for the question. We did receive significant public comment, some in favor of credit, no credit, some opposed to it, and we weighed those public comments against what we saw in other districts, what we spoke with numerous college admissions officers throughout the country, in public schools, private schools, small liberal arts schools, large state schools, and based on all of that input, the decision was made that given what's going on with everything going on, that credit, no credit was the most equitable thing to do. And we, based on the conversations with deans of admission, we believe that the kids will not be hurt by that. And everyone we spoke to, without exception, said it won't matter. Several will tell you off the record, we won't even really look at grades this semester because of it's so unusual. So, and my understanding also is that colleges are looking at scholarship issues to take into account the fact that many schools across the country, many school districts across the country have gone to a credit, no credit or pass-fail setup. So there's a full description in the FAQs on our website about why we didn't do choice. But the short answer, because I don't mean to just tell people go look at a website, the short answer is that the belief was that choice highlights very significantly the inequities that exist between kids, and that if you are unable to participate in distance learning, well, for whatever reason, you're just struggling in general, your parents someone may be sick, your parents may be working, you may be watching a sibling, for whatever reason, that having a choice highlights those disparities. Because if you have a choice model and a college knows you have a choice model, if you don't choose grades, people will assume, oh, that's because they didn't do very well, and that was deemed to be inequitable for many of the kids struggling through this. So again, this is the choice, no choice or credit, no credit rather, is a very complicated topic, but we did receive public input. That, in conjunction with the research we did talking to colleges across the country, informed our decision. And again, absolutely accept that there are very valid reasons why people don't like that. Absolutely accept that there are very valid reasons that you could put forth in favor of a choice model. So absolutely accept that. We had to make a decision based on the information we had. That was the decision the board made.
So I want to expand a little bit on what Paul said, and he said it very eloquently. We also had a board meeting, and the board meeting is recorded, and you can go back and look at the debate we had and how much input we did have from the public. We had a lot of students, a lot of teachers, a lot of parents weighed in, whether they weighed in on the phone or whether during the board meeting, or they weighed in with emails, or they weighed in with letters. And there was a very robust discussion on this that Paul summarized very well. I do want to point out that I know Paul and myself, and I know the other board members, Sharon Wallen, Ira Glasky, and Betty Carroll, we all dug deep into researching, and Paul and I both talked to colleges ourselves just to understand what colleges, because the big thing at junior year is you're looking at what colleges are doing, and hands down, every type of college that I talked to, and I believe Paul talked to, said that this is not about their junior year per se, or their freshman year. It will be noted that COVID-19 did disrupt something. Even on our transcripts, we were going to have COVID-19 asterisk on the transcripts from our freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, just in case someone forgets. But I don't think at this point anyone's going to forget. And they said they were going to look at it as a school, not comparing it to other school districts or other schools within the district. It's just the school. And pretty much all colleges said to me was, we're going to look at what they did before and what they did after. And that's the most important thing.
Perfect, thank you. And then Christy asks, is the district planning to hire more support staff, instructional aides, if there will be hybrid learning in the fall? I know many teachers are struggling with EDL, and have them teach both would be very difficult.
Lauren, yeah, why don't you start?
Well, again, we go back to, we are planning many different scenarios for the fall. We don't know what the scenario is going to be because of how fluid our situation is right now. We also have to look at many other things of what's happening in the state, budgetary wise. And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but as we look at what's happening budget wise and going forward, and what we will have to do to get school started, that is one scenario. That is something that it's important to have enough people, and enough people that can do everything we need. We may need to take temperatures of kids coming in, and we may need to have masks. And yeah, in smaller grades, we have to make sure that kids are not necessarily hugging other children, or whatever our parameters are. We will have the people in place to do that within all our restrictions and everything we have to do.
Thank you. Naz asks, these are questions from a few viewers in her watch party. With budget cuts, how can we reopen schools safely?
So, hey Naz, how are you? So it is a challenge, and for those who don't know, the governor's May revised budget, so not the final budget, but came out, and they're obviously, because of economic hit to the state because of COVID, the budget for education is being reduced about $18 billion. So a significant amount of money. There are different ways that affect different districts, but it is a large hit to all school districts, and especially because of the way funding works, and I won't bore you with that, a large hit to IUSD. We anticipated that this might be a problem, so there are things we're working on to mitigate the effects of that budget hit. But it is a challenge. But we would obviously, we would divert money in a way that we would open safely. We would not let it be the case that, hey, we would like to do this. This is what we need to do to be safe, but we don't have the money. We will ensure that the safety of the students and the staff are the priority. And with some of the things we've done to mitigate the effects of the budget, we feel confident we feel confident money won't be the large constraint for that, and we will make it a priority. I will say, however, that people need to understand from a budget point of view that when you have budget cuts, the idea that you're going to have, you know, double the number of instructional assistants and all of a sudden break out these classrooms into classes of 8 or 10, that practically cannot happen. So we still, there are still realities within which we have to operate. So some of the things that people might posit as a potential way to deal with this issue involves both facility requirements and people requirements that are not realistic in any way. I mean, we have X number of classrooms, that's what we have. We can't all of a sudden have 30 more in one school and put 5 kids in each class. That's just, it's impossible. So the budget issue is an issue, and those constraints are real and will be real in the next several years. But I can commit that the safety of students and teachers and staff, our classified folks, everybody, would be the priority, and money would shift around to deal with that.
I'd like to confirm what Paul said. Money will shift around to make sure that we're doing the right thing by each student. And as Paul said, the facilities, you know, talk about being flexible and fluid. Facilities may not be what you think facilities are. So if we need to put 10 students in a classroom, we may have a pop-up outside where 10 students are reading outside with an instructional assistant, getting in their learning time, and then cleaning a classroom and flipping. So there's going to be many different scenarios, and it's a great think tank that we have at IUSD that are coming up with these ideas that are going to make it right by the students. And that is what we're here for, is to make sure we make it right for each student. So the flexibility will be there. And we will move money around and move things around, as Paul said, to make sure we get things right.
Okay, so a follow-up question to that is from Brett. And he said, Tony Thurmond said today California schools could not open safely without federal funds. What does that mean for IUSD?
Lauren, you were on that call. I heard about it afterwards. I was not on that call, but why don't you, and then I can add some context also.
And Farah, it's interesting because you and I have both talked about the CARE dollars.
Right.
So there are dollars. So it's the acronym. The acronym is CARE, and if I could remember, it's what it stands for. It's coming from the federal government, and right now it's being allocated through the state. Not the way that I think is great for IUSD, but that may be changing. But there are other things that are happening. For instance, there's some bonds that are being looked at to make sure that we have enough health and safety dollars available for students coming into school. As I said before, there may be restrictions. We may have to do the wand test on kids' heads when they come in. We don't know. So we need those dollars to make sure those happen. Farah, give me the question again so I make sure I answer the question.
Sure. Basically, it's about what our state superintendent, Tony Thurmond, said today, that schools could not open safely without federal funds. And what does that mean for IUSD?
Right. And so that also, opening safely is what we're looking at. So what it means for IUSD is, do we start with distance learning and slowly open classrooms? Do we open classrooms, as Paul and I were discussing before, as a module of hybrids of moving kids around so they're not there? We're looking to the federal funds to support us opening, but it is, as we said before, very fluid. We won't know that actually until a little bit after July 15th.
And there is about $4.5 billion of CARES Act money that the governor has set aside for schools. So there is some of that federal money there, and obviously different districts are in different positions. And there are things that come down from the state, from where there are these sweeping statements that have not always been vetted at a district level. So there was a statement that came out from the state superintendent of instruction's office a couple weeks ago saying, well, maybe we should open in July, and just kind of, they hadn't really talked to anyone. So some of these comments that are made I'm not saying they're wrong, but they don't necessarily reflect significant discussion with the local districts. There has been some federal money already provided to the state. Some has already been allocated to or will be allocated to education. Some of that will come to ISD, some of it will not for a variety of reasons. So some of that is there, but Lauren's exactly right. You know, what quote opening safely means is literally the $1 million question, or maybe $100 million question. But that is what we have to determine. And to close out, we have to determine that within the context of financial reality. I mean, if we had, money can fix many things. If we had $20 billion, all those comments I made about people and facilities and all that would change, because money can fix many of these things. But opening safely will be assessed by us in the context of our fiscal reality, not assuming that we have a budget of $1 billion versus a budget of 350 million, which is what we actually have.
But in all reality, money can't fix anything, and we have to make sure that it can't fix everything. So
no, that's right.
That it's right. Yeah, and Paul brought up a good point, and we're dealing with it daily on comments that are coming out that are saying, like the governor said, we're going to open July 1st. And I think his intention was he wants to open schools then let people go out and go to work, and schools then become, it's a natural thing. It's a natural childcare for people to get the whole economy started. And we do want to get this economy going, and we want to pull out of this recession, but we can't do it as an expense to the next generation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Elise comments, I worry about my daughter's mental health and academic success if school is not back in the fall. I think a lot of us are in the same boat. You know, you guys know I've got a high schooler, and there's a lot going on right now.
They're craving connectivity. They're craving social, emotional. They need that. We all need the hug. We all need to know our friends are good. Our friends are with us. It's a very hard time. I was on a phone call today with NAMI and the Mental Health Board of Orange County, and we were talking about what happens and how are we preparing as schools to go ahead and be able to support these kids if distance learning is the option, or if they go to school and they can't do that with their friends. They can't be with their friends. They may be able to be in a classroom, but after school would be different. Basketball would be different. Sports is different. So how do we keep how do we keep everybody going and making sure that we're on top of keeping spirits up? In Irvine, we're ahead of the game. We have a lot of mental health professionals within our district. We have wellness counselors at every high school. And by the way, if anybody feels their student is not in a good place right now, our wellness counselors are still here. And if you want to talk to their teacher first, go ahead. But we have the Speak Up, We Care. We have a hotline. Just be involved, because it is a very uncomfortable time for all of us, for parents, for students, for the community in general. But mental health, and Paul will reiterate, it is one of our biggest concerns, and we always look at the whole child. You can't have great academics unless you have a great social emotional child.
And that, no, very well said. And that, the idea of the stress on kids from a mental health perspective of not being able to be in school is absolutely one of the factors that is figured in when we're trying to weigh all the various factors of safety. But that is one of the factors that militates in favor of trying to get kids back to school, at least in some form. But again, one of the factors that's balanced against many. And I do want to reiterate to parents that the wellness counselors, health and wellness counselors are available. And I know a phone call to a counselor doesn't necessarily fix things, but I do want people to know that even today with the distance learning, those resources are available, and parents or their students or together should feel free to access those resources. Again, it doesn't fix the underlying problem. I absolutely accept that, but it may help to deal with some of the symptoms that students are feeling.
Thank you. Alejandra has a question and asks, will bus transportation be available next year? We are both healthcare workers and our caregiver doesn't drive and depend on bus transportation.
School, I'm sorry, just, I don't know, is your understanding school bus, meaning school bus for children as opposed to city bus for the parents?
This is more, I'm going to interpret this as school bus.
So we don't have many school bus routes. We have a few school bus routes that parents pay into. I could go over those routes. If you want to give her our information, or I'm sorry, her name was? Alejandra. If you want to call the district and talk about that, we can talk about that. But in general, there's only a few school bus routes, as I said, that parents pay into. So either at the end, if you want to take either my or Paul's email address and email us, and we could talk to you about that.
At the end of the town hall, I'll go ahead and post both Lauren and Paul's emails in the comments for you guys to have if you have further questions. Now, Robin asks, would antibody tests be available for children returning to school?
I don't know that we know the level of testing that would be available, and that'll be probably a combination of work between the city and the schools and Orange County Health Association. So I don't know that I could say now that the school district itself will have its own battery of tests that are available. Testing will obviously be, again, one of the many factors that is considered. And obviously FARE knows more than we about the city's involvement with testing, the county's involvement with testing. So I would expect that testing would be a more robust part of everyone's life come July and August. But I can't say at this point that the schools would offer antibody testing.
And it may be that that information hasn't gotten to Paul and I yet, but we do have.
I just don't know.
We do have a full nursing staff, health staff that are constantly working with things like that, and they're part of the discussion at all times about with opening schools. We also have an outside committee of medical professionals that also is one of our committees that work with us on those things. But it just may not have come up to Paul and my level yet.
Sure.
The information.
And as you guys know, the city will be offering the antigen, the PCR swab test for the virus itself to our residents and workers. And that's going to be starting up later on this month. But again, that's just a snapshot in time. It'll just tell you whether you have the virus that day or not. It doesn't mean that 2 days later or a week later, due to activity or somewhere that you are, that you can't catch that virus and be infected. So, you know, that is coming up. And again, with the testing that's out there, we're kind of taking it like a, you know, like a grain. It's information, but it's not enough for us to determine if we're safe from the virus moving forward. So now Sandy asks, will you continue with credit, no credit grading system in the fall?
As of right now, I'm going to say credit, no credit will end when this semester ends. When we come back in the fall, again, everything is fluid, but right now the whole focus is making sure we're at a normal school year. So within that, we will be having, it will be a normal grading for our students, which would be the A, B, C, D in the upper grades, and in the lower grades, the progress reports.
Got it, perfect. And then Calvin asks, distance learning is particularly challenging for preschool age students with special needs and IEPs. Is there any progress that can be communicated on that front?
So, I mean, I'll try to answer the question. Hopefully this does some. So, yeah, we understand that distance learning is challenging for many students and often more challenging for special ed students or children who have particular special needs. So the district and the special ed department of the district is constantly working to take input about some of the challenges parents are having and doing what we can to continuously modify and improve the distance learning. So, but when someone says, "Is there progress?" we're continually trying to make that better. I can't point to a specific metric that says it was worse, 2 weeks ago, and today the metric is better. So I don't have that information, but we're very much aware of the challenge, the unique challenges posed for children with special needs.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Kim asks, would you consider part-time on campus where half the kids attend 2 days and the other half attend on 2 other days? Those not on campus would have distance learning. And I know we went over this a little bit.
Yeah, and that's exactly one of the things that has been thrown around. So thank you, Kim. But yes, that's what I told you. We have a tremendous think tank working with each kind of scenario, and that's definitely one of the scenarios that was thrown up. Whether that scenario works is, again, what happens from now until the opening of school. And as I said, we have there are so many scenarios out there that we're trying to do. We have to wait for the information to be able to set on what we're going to do. But yeah, thanks, Kim, for it. It was Kim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the suggestion. Great suggestion. Good minds.
All right, and Judith asks, is there a way to standardize distance learning so that all teachers are providing direct instruction versus optional office hours? I feel frustrated that some schools and classrooms are getting an hour a day of instruction with related assignments. My children just get hours of busy work with optional office hours.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's and obviously super fair, super important question. There are kind of standards and guidelines that have been given to teachers, but again, I absolutely accept that. And when I say accept, I don't mean I'm okay with it. I just accept that this is that parents are correct, that there is a disparity in the way distance learning is being conveyed to different parents, even within the same school, possibly even within the same grade. And to Lauren's point earlier about trying to remove the emergency part from being in front of distance learning, part of a critical part of that is ensuring that there's greater consistency, that we look at the things that have worked well, things that haven't worked well, where there have been challenges during this semester, and do everything we can to eliminate those challenges, have greater consistency, and look for ways to increase engagement with teachers. There was a survey that was conducted by a survey and market research company called Hanover that we use a lot for educational research, and we're processing the results of that in terms of how often people students met with their teachers. We look at the student's perspective, and then we look at the parent's perspective. Needless to say, they're not always the same. So we're gathering that actual hard data along with the other information we're getting from principals and teachers and parents to figure out how to make it more consistent and overall, frankly, just better going forward, whether we need that on a full-time basis for some period of time or we need it on some type of hybrid basis. We definitely are doing everything we can to improve and make more consistent the distance learning.
Right, and as Paul said, we went in, as I said before, we went into this as emergency distance learning, but what we've had now is time to really put together, along with our year-long program of doing a blended learning that we were planning to do anyway, which is a hybrid of distance learning and meeting once a week with a teacher. So we have a lot more depth now in our distance learning, and we have a summer to, if that's the way we're going, we have a summer to really get our teachers wrapped around what is moving forward. So we are grateful to our students, our parents, our teachers to be so flexible right now with this distance learning. We turned on a dime, we turned in 2 days. I can't tell you how wonderful to see the community working together, but no doubt there's a lot better that can be and will be done.
Thank you. And then Melissa asks, what about opening up online after-school clubs with a teacher supervising, but allowing students to interact freely as they do not during class? It would be student-led and designed like school clubs. And this is all online.
That,
I mean,
I think that would be great if people would do that. I don't know if our teachers can do it, but I am sure individuals can put together those kind of school clubs. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think a lot of adults do it now. They get together, but I think it's a great idea.
great.
Let's see. Yeah, some of the questions that I'm seeing right now, if you guys want to go back and review the video, we did go over a lot about the graduations. We went over the credit, no credit, and we went over some of the budget questions. So I'm just going to skip over those as I see them, just so we're not repeating them. But if you want to review the video afterwards, they were discussed. Let's see. What about plastic dividers that South Korea is having for their student desks as they return?
Again, another great idea.
Yeah, and you know, all those types of things in terms of changes to facilities that don't require, you know, building a whole building are things we absolutely would consider. Are there ways to do that where you keep the classroom essentially similar, but you put up some dividers? I work for a global company, and some of our facilities, we've done that, and it's worked well. We put up plexiglass between cubes or stations in a production facility, and so that's absolutely something that we would consider and would maybe part of how we open a school again, whether it's on a hybrid basis, a completely full basis, but those are the types of facilities ideas that we definitely would entertain and are looking at.
I'm sure everybody has seen the hug the grandma wanted, where they put the plastic curtain and they made the arms. To me, things like that, if we can create that environment where you can actually hug someone and actually, you know, connect. I keep using that word and I'm sorry. Those are all great ideas. Look what the nail salons are doing with the shields, and just the, you know, there's so many things that we can do. And as Paul said, all those ideas are great, and all those ideas are coming together. And any idea anybody has, you know, you throw it out there. If we haven't thought about it yet, it will be greatly appreciated.
Right. And then there's another question by Brett. Could you explain more about this think tank that is deeply involved in making these decisions? How does a parent participate in this process moving forward?
You know, when I said think tank, I said it more of our, all of our staff is constantly throwing out ideas. It's not necessarily people get into a room and sit there and just, you know, as you imagine a think tank, but this is just ideas coming together at all times. Paul, myself, and the board have weekly meetings with the superintendent, or we'll have individual meetings where we'll throw out ideas. The executive committee has ideas. All staff, all teachers have ideas. It all just comes through. It's not, I use the word think tank more as a global discussion. But as I said, if you have an idea, throw it out there, send it to me on email, send it to Paul on email. And, you know, no idea is ever bad. Something could come up from everything.
Okay, so we are hitting our 7 o'clock time, and I know there's a whole bunch of other questions still coming through. I just want to thank everyone for joining us. If it's okay with you guys, what I'll do is I'll go through these questions, maybe email them to you, and we can maybe get some answers that we can respond back.
Sure.
And to these folks. Again, Lauren and Paul, thank you so much for joining today and taking time out of your busy schedules to answer really some very concerning questions from our parent community.
Sarah,
thank you.
Sarah, thank you for pulling this together and moderating it in a very easy way. And thank you for asking us to join you in this.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to the parents. I know, you know, it's dinner time for many people, and especially if you have kids. So thank you to parents for joining and participating, and being interested in your kids. And thank you for the community input. We welcome it and we value it. So thank you to the community, and Farrah, to you, thank you very much personally for inviting us. We greatly appreciate it.
The key word is we value it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So again, folks, for those of you that had questions that didn't get answered, I will jot those down, get them to our school board members, and get some answers for you. And who knows, maybe maybe down the line we'll do another one of these.
Absolutely.
Follow up.
We're happy to join you at any time.
Anytime you want, Farrah.
Perfect. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.